Soon, a gentle dusk began to descend over Lysagrad, the quiet little town of animals. The sky slowly changed its color. The bright daytime blue dissolved into a soft, silvery glow, and the tall white clouds, like slow little ships, drifted lower and lower as if tired from the day and searching for a place to rest for the night. Lysagrad was a special place. It lay deep within a vast forest among ancient trees that knew the stories of hundreds of generations. Everything there was calm, soft, and natural. Every path was carpeted with moss. Every little house was built from nature. Twigs, leaves, cones, soft earth, and smooth stones. And every creature lived the way their families had lived for many, many years. The town stretched along a small forest river. During the day, the river rushed cheerfully over stone riffles, chimed, laughed, and glimmered in the sun. But now, in the evening, its voice grew quieter. The river seemed to whisper a lullaby, lulling all of Lysagrad to sleep. On one side of the river were small homes dug into the earth, cozy burrows, warm and soft. Rabbits, badgers, mice, a small family of hedgehogs, and many other forest dwellers lived there. On the other side lived those who preferred height: squirrels, owls, tits, woodpeckers, and other feathered neighbors. Their homes were built so high that in the evenings stars often peeked through their windows. Every animal lived in the way it felt natural, but they all knew Lysagrad was a home for everyone. They were all friends, helped each other, visited one another, shared their food, and were always happy to meet. That evening, as on almost every evening, the little ones were playing in the big forest meadow near the river. The meadow was covered with soft grass that gently tickled their paws. White daisies, blue cornflowers, and delicate yellow blossoms swayed around them, still holding sleepy butterflies on their petals. The air smelled of honey, freshness, coolness, and something that exists only in the forest when evening approaches on quiet feet. There on the meadow played little animals of many kinds. There were 4 little rabbits, 2 sisters, very similar with long ears, and 2 brothers who always competed in speed. There was a small red fox cub named Lori, who loved to explore everything and was always running ahead of everyone, sniffing flowers, pebbles, or tracks left by other animals. There was a tiny squirrel named Tikki, who hardly ever ran on the ground. She preferred to hop as if between invisible branches. And sometimes they were joined by a quiet mouse named Mina, the smallest of all, yet the most observant. She noticed such tiny details that others never even guessed about. They played all day long, chased each other, gathered flowers, built little houses from blades of grass, listened to the river, and even argued about whose tail was prettier: the fluffy fox tail, the soft rabbit tail, or the bright red squirrel tail. But then the sun dipped halfway behind the distant trees. The forest filled with soft coolness. Shadows grew longer, calmer, gentler. Birds stopped chirping loudly. They were preparing for sleep. And the air became so quiet that one could hear how softly the leaves rustled at the very tops of the trees. And the little animals understood the day was coming to its end. The rabbit kits were the first to start their way home, though they were so tired that they walked very slowly. Fox cub Lori yawned so widely that he made himself laugh. Squirrel Tikki wanted to make one last jump, but her paws trembled slightly. They were tired too. Mouse Mina was already leaning against a daisy, her eyes closing by themselves. But still, none of them wanted to leave first. The evening was too beautiful. So the rabbit kits suggested that they all walk together. Everyone agreed. It was warmer, calmer, and friendlier that way. The little animals stepped onto the forest path that led straight to Lysagrad. There, the first tiny lights already flickered. Fireflies loved gathering near the homes of animals, as if guarding their night's rest. The walk took time because they kept getting distracted. Fox cub Lori would spot a new pine cone. Squirrel Ticky would notice a beautiful star between the branches. Mouse Mina would say, "Look, what a beautiful moss, like a tiny green blanket." And meanwhile, the forest grew stiller and stiller. It felt pleasant to listen to, like someone big and kind was whispering a story. When the little animals reached the first houses, they began to say goodbye. The rabbit kits hopped into their burrow, where their mother was waiting with fragrant burble stew. Fox cub Lori headed to his cozy den at the roots of a great oak. Squirrel Ticky climbed up her tree trunk, where her mother already held a warm nut soup. And Mouse Mina slipped into her little home under a pine root, where soft leaves and a tiny cup of warm berry tea awaited her. But the story didn't end there, because night in Lysagrad was a time of wonders. When the little animals had eaten, washed, and settled into their soft beds, Lysagrad fell completely silent. Above, the stars peered down. They were especially bright tonight, like tiny lanterns hanging from the enormous ceiling of the sky. The river whispered so softly, brushing the stones with its current. Somewhere far away, a night bird called, its voice calm and even, as if it too was singing a lullaby. The rabbit kits lay next to each other on their soft grassy bed. Fox cub Lori curled up next to his mother's paws. Squirrel Ticky snuggled in her nest covered by warm leaves. And Mouse Mina slipped into her little home under a pine root, where soft leaves and a tiny cup of warm berry tea awaited her. But the story didn't end there, because in Lysagrad, it was tradition that at the end of the day, every little one heard a wise story from a mother, a father, or a grandmother. These stories were passed down from generation to generation and lulled the little ones to sleep. The rabbit's grandmother told them a tale about the moon path, which appears only when rabbit kits are almost asleep. Squirrel Ticky's mother told her about the wise woodpecker who taps on the stars every night to make sure they are all in their places. Fox cub Lori's father told him about the red spark, a tiny fox that guards the dreams of animals. And Mouse Mina's grandmother told her about the small gray cloud that gathers the dreams of little creatures to make the morning kind. And under the whisper of these stories, the little ones slowly closed their eyes, and each of them saw their own dream, soft as down, quiet as river mist, kind as an evening forest. And Lysagrad, down to its last little house, drifted into sleep as well. No creature was running along the paths anymore. No bird fluttered between the branches. Even the wind seemed to freeze, gazing at the night sky. Only the stars continued their slow dance, and the river whispered its tales, and the ancient trees stood as silent guardians over the little town. That was how the night passed. Calm, quiet, warm, filled with wonders that reveal themselves only to those who know how to listen to silence. And when the first sunlight touches the soft moss at the entrances of burrows, when the birds begin their morning choir, when the little ones open their sleepy eyes, Lysagrad will come alive again. A new day will begin. New games, new discoveries, new little but important joys. But for now, everything is quiet. Everything is peaceful. Everything rests. The forest, the river, the little animals, every small home, every soft leaf, and every dream walking along the night paths straight into Lysograd.
Night in Forest Town deepened, growing darker and quieter, but not scarier. On the contrary, even cozier. The trees seemed to lean toward each other, creating a soft green roof over the little town. The leaves didn't rustle, they only sighed lightly, as if they too were sleepy. The river had become almost silent. Its voice now resembled a faint, gentle purr. If someone listened closely, they could hear how the water stroked the pebbles, as if lulling them to sleep. And above all of this, above every little house, every burrow and branch, above all the land of Forest Town, a huge silver moon floated calmly. Its light didn't blind. It was soft, like the fur of a baby animal. It made everything feel warm. Anyone who stepped into this moonlight would want to close their eyes and smile. All the little animals, tired after the day's games, were already asleep in their cozy beds. But one little one still couldn't fall asleep. It was Remy the bunny, the most curious of all 4 rabbit siblings. He lay in his burrow under a soft blanket of warm grasses next to his sisters and brother, but sleep simply wouldn't come. Remy opened one eye, then the other, then closed them again. He lay on one side, then the other, tried covering himself more warmly, tried stretching his paws out to cool off. Nothing helped. So he quietly lifted his ears. He listened. The burrow was quiet. Only the gentle breathing of his mother and the faint touch of the outside wind on the grass near the entrance could be heard. Remy thought, maybe I'll just listen to the forest. I'll be tiny and quiet like a shadow. I'll listen, and then I'll fall asleep right away. He very carefully wriggled out from under the blanket, so carefully that none of his siblings woke up. He walked to the burrow entrance and peeked outside. The forest was dark, but kind. Everything looked different than it did during the day. The trees seemed enormous. The moon hung so low it felt like he could reach it. The flowers weren't bright, but glowed faintly with a cool shimmer. Fireflies flickered near the bushes like tiny nightlights. Remy breathed in the cool night air. It was fresh like morning dew and smelled of meadow flowers and night grasses. He wasn't going to run far. Just look. Just listen. Just see how the forest sleeps. He stepped onto the path. And then something strange happened. Right before him, on the ground he had run across hundreds of times that day, a thin, almost invisible glowing line appeared. It was the moonlit path. His grandmother had told stories about it. It appears only to the most attentive little ones who listen to the heart of the forest. The path was bright, but not dazzling, more like the soft light of a firefly reflected in a dewdrop. It stretched deeper into the forest, but not into something frightening, rather into a place where everything whispered, "Come, look, don't be afraid." Remy took a tiny step, then another. The path didn't disappear. It seemed to wait for him. "Just a little," the bunny whispered. "I'll just look, then come back." He walked very quietly, so quietly that even the owl, perched on a tall branch, watching over the night, didn't notice him for at first. The moonlit path led between the trees, which gently lowered their branches as if greeting him. Sometimes a soft, golden firefly drifted by. Sometimes a sleepy moth fluttered among the leaves. Sometimes a cricket chirped far away, and its calm, steady voice made Remy's eyelids droop on their own. But he kept walking. The path brought him to a small clearing, the same one where the little animals played during the day. But now it looked different. A silver mist lay over the clearing. The flowers glowed faintly. The air shimmered with gentle moonlight. And in the very center of the clearing stood a small stone that Remy had never seen before. It was smooth, round, and glowed almost imperceptibly like a quiet sigh. Remy walked closer, placed his paw on the stone, and at that moment, the whole forest seemed to smile just a little and whispered, "Good night, little friend." Remy felt a warm wave pass through his paw, not hot or strong, but soft and peaceful, like a mother's embrace. His eyes became heavy at once, his shoulders relaxed, his ears drooped slowly. He yawned, the tiniest little yawn, and he realized he no longer wanted to explore. He wanted to sleep. He turned and saw that the moonlit path now led back. It was just as soft and glowing as before. Remy walked along it, feeling sleep wrap him in a gentle haze. When he reached his burrow, the path disappeared just as quietly as it had appeared. Remy slipped inside, wiggled back under his blanket. His sisters and brother didn't even notice he had been gone. Remy closed his eyes, and at that very moment, the forest whispered one last soft night secret. "It's good that you listen to the heart of nature, little one." And Remy fell asleep, deeply and peacefully, as only little bunnies can sleep when their family is near, when the forest guards the night, when the stars shine softly, and the moonlit path disappears gently into the world of dreams.
In the silence of early dawn, the forest was still breathing with the coolness of the night. A silvery mist hung above the tops of the pines, like a light blanket covering the earth after long dreams. The birds were not singing yet. They were only just beginning to open their eyes in their nests. And somewhere far away, barely audible, crackled the last sparks of the stars disappearing into the brightening sky. The first rays of the sun carefully slipped between the branches as if afraid to wake anyone too early. They gently touched the moss, warmed the cold dewdrops, and made them sparkle with tiny rainbow lights. The forest town of animals was slowly waking up. On the edge of the town, in a cozy burrow under a spreading oak, the first to wake was little Licia, a red, fluffy fox girl with shiny, still sleepy eyes. She stretched, fluffed her tail, and listened. It was quiet, so quiet that even her own breathing seemed to be a part of the great forest symphony. "Is it morning already?" she whispered, yawning so widely she felt she could swallow a sunbeam. From deeper in the burrow came her mother's gentle voice. "Yes, little one, wake up. We have a big day ahead." Licia peeked outside and breathed in the fresh morning scent. It smelled of pine needles, wet bark, and something new, something that had not yet begun. Meanwhile, in a nearby house, little bear Barney was waking up. He always rose earlier than everyone else, not because he was full of energy, but because his stomach woke up first. As soon as the dawn's light appeared, Barney slowly got up, rubbed his eyes, and walked to the kitchen, where his mother was already setting out porridge with forest berries. "Good morning, Mom," he said, with his mouth full, even though he hadn't even sat down yet. "Good morning, my fluffy little bundle," his mother replied with a warm smile. "Today is a clear day, perfect for a walk." And higher up the hill, in a house built on a big maple tree, Owl Selena spread her wings to open the windows. She always loved letting in the morning light. Her owlets, Lou and Lena, were still sleeping sweetly, nestled against one another, but Selena gently shielded their eyes from the sunlight with her wing. "Sleep a little more. Morning can wait." Along the paths of the forest town, animals walked slowly. Someone opened their shop, someone carried chairs into the yard, someone swept away the fallen leaves. Everyone smiled, not because they were very energetic, but because of this town was customary to begin the day with kindness.
Fawn Phil looked in on his friend little raccoon Timmy. Timmy was already at the door, energetic and glowing as always. "Are we going to the meadow today?" he asked, bouncing with impatience. "Yes, we wanted to see the first sunflowers bloom," Phil replied, shaking dew from his head. And so step by step, the forest filled with morning sounds, the rustling of paws, the light steps of the little animals, the gentle songs of waking birds, and the distant murmur of a stream. But the warmest sound of all was children's laughter, thin, ringing, and completely sincere. It spread over the town like a ray of light that could not help but warm everyone around. The young residents of the forest town were gathering together today by the big stone on the sunny meadow. There, wonderful discoveries, games, and new stories awaited them. Stories that were only beginning to weave through the air like the first threads of morning light. And the sun rose higher and higher, promising that this day would be kind, gentle, and very, very warm.
When the sun finally rose above the trees, its rays stretched across the paths in wide golden bands. The forest town was fully awake. Somewhere, little bells rang on shop doors. Somewhere, wooden spoons clattered. Somewhere, little animals laughed, gathering for their morning walk. Licia ran out of her burrow, carefully closing the door behind her with her tail. Her mother had taught her so that the warmth would stay inside. She took a deep breath of the sunny air and felt the little adventure bloom in her chest. By the old oak tree, her friends were already waiting: Barney, Timmy, and Phil. "You're not late," Timmy explained joyfully, bouncing so high it seemed he could reach the next branch. "And where are the owlets?" Licia asked, looking around. "They're coming down," Phil replied, pointing to the maple. Indeed, Lou and Lena carefully hopped from branch to branch, still a little sleepy, but already smiling. "We're ready," Lena said, adjusting a tiny feather that had escaped her morning fluff. The small explorers only had to decide where to go on this sunny day. And of course, the choice was obvious: to the sunny meadow. The path there was always special. First, the little animals walked along the stream, which sounded especially joyful today. The water was clear as glass and colorful leaves floated on its surface like miniature boats. "Look!" exclaimed Barney, leaning over the water. "A fish! No, two! Wait, so many!" "They're the baby silver trout," Phil said importantly. "They always appear in spring." "How do you know that?" Licia asked in surprise. Phil shrugged. "I like to listen to what Mom tells me." Next, the path led to the Bridge of Wishes, a small wooden bridge that was Lou and Lena's favorite spot. Crossing it, they always whispered their secret wishes into the gaps between the planks, believing the bridge would keep them safe. Today was no exception. "I hope we find something amazing," Lena whispered. "And I hope everyone is happy," added Lou softly. Timmy glanced at Licia. "Your wishes are always the kindest." Finally, the trees parted, and before the friends stretched the sunny meadow, huge, bright, and warm. The grass was so soft it felt like falling into a cloud. But the most wonderful part was the flowers. They grew everywhere: yellow, white, pink, blue, big and small. Some only opened in the morning and closed afternoon, so right now they shone especially brightly. "Wow!" the animals breathed in unison. In the center of the meadow stood a large, smooth stone known as the Stone of Stories. It was said to hold the memory of every laugh, every step, every happy moment that had ever happened nearby. Phil sat down and ran his hoof over the warm surface with a smile. "It seems it's happy to see us." "Of course it is. It's always happy when we come." The animals placed their little baskets on the stone, each with their treasures. Licia collected a few smooth pebbles from the stream. Barney brought a jar of honey, just in case.
Timmy had a set of colorful leaves he considered especially rare. Then Lou noticed something strange. "Look," he said, stepping closer to the edge of the meadow. "There are footprints." Indeed, tiny prints appeared in the soft soil as if left by someone light, careful, and very small. "These aren't ours," Licia said, leaning closer. "Who could it be?" Phil sniffed. Deer were particularly good at this. "It smells sweet, something like flower jelly and a little blueberry." "Maybe it's someone from the meadow families," Lena suggested. "No," Barney said. "I know the smell of everyone who loves sweets. It's not them." The little animals exchanged glances. Their tiny secret adventure seemed to have found them. The tracks led toward the forest edge, where the grass grew taller and the trees stood a little closer together. The farther they went, the more noticeable it became. The footprints were increasing, as if the little unknown one was running back and forth, exploring every leaf. "Maybe it's a baby?" asked Lou. "Maybe," Licia replied. "But what kind?" Then a quiet sound came from the bushes. Very quiet, like a tiny sneeze, small and timid. "It's you!" Everyone froze. Timmy stepped forward. "Hey, who's there?" he called softly. The bushes shook once more, and suddenly out popped something small, round and fluffy. It looked like a moss ball, but with ears. Incredible tiny paws, huge eyes glistening like wet pearls, and a tiny nose trembling with excitement. "Oh," Licia breathed. "Who are you?" The little lantern, that's what it looked like, pressed itself to the ground and squeaked softly. I'm lost." The animals approached carefully so not to scare it further. Lou placed his wing on his chest. "Don't be afraid. We won't hurt you." The little one sniffled and looked up. I'm looking for my family." A gentle silence fell over the meadow, and all 6 friends realized their sunny adventure was only just beginning. The little one sat in the grass, trembling with his small, round body, as if the leaves around him were too big and frightening. His fur shimmered in the sunlight, soft, light, slightly golden, like the evening light when the sun sets behind the hills. Licia carefully crouched down beside him, resting on her front paws. "Everything's okay," she said in a quiet, gentle voice. "We'll help you. What's your name?" The little one blinked, as if hearing words that didn't scare him for the first time in a long while. I'm Lum," he whispered. "Lum," Lena repeated. "Such a beautiful name." "It sounds like light," Phil observed. "It suits you." Indeed, it seemed the air around the little one glowed slightly. Barely noticeable, but if you looked closely, you could catch a warm, soft shimmer, as if a tiny spark of morning sunlight hid in his fur. Barney carefully reached out his paw. "Do you want some berries?" "I have." He opened his jar of honey and blueberries. Lum's eyes sparkled, a little brighter. "Just a little," he murmured. Timmy helped him out of the thick grass, and the little one took a few unsteady steps. He was so light he barely left any marks, just tiny little indentations. "Where did you lose your family?" Luce asked softly. Lum sighed, barely audible like the wind brushing through the grass. "We were traveling at night. We're looking for a new place for our nest. My family likes to live near flowers that glow, but I got distracted by the lights, and," he lowered his head, "I fell behind. I thought I could catch up, but it got dark. I got lost, and in the morning I was all alone." His words were quiet, but they tugged a little at the hearts of the animals.
Being alone in a big forest isn't easy, even for the bravest. It's okay, Timmy said confidently. We're together now. We'll find your family, right, everyone? Of course, they all replied in unison. Lum smiled for the first time, just a little, but he smiled. At that moment, a light breeze stirred the grass around them. It felt as if the forest were listening. The sun illuminated the distant edges of the meadow where tiny, barely visible sparks flickered among the tree trunks, as if an unseen hand had given a signal. Phil raised his head, peering ahead. I saw it! There, among the trees! Something was shining! Does your family glow too? Licia asked the little one. Lum nodded. Yes, especially my mom. She's like a lantern, only much brighter. Lena smiled. Then finding them will be easier than it seems. But Barney frowned. This forest is big. Really big. Maybe we should call the adults. Phil shook his head. We can look first. Adults might scare the little ones, but we won't. We're quiet. And indeed, the little animals were gentle, kind, and attentive, those who could easily befriend any little creature. Licia stood, shook her tail, and looked at her friends. Then, let's go, but slowly, so Lum doesn't get tired. And they moved toward the direction Phil had indicated, toward the shade of the trees where the air grew slightly cooler and the ground became softer and damper. The further they went, the more magical the forest became. Leaves glowed with drops of dew, holding tiny sun sparks within. Birds' voices echoed gently through the branches. The air became soft, fragrant with floral honey. Suddenly, Timmy stopped and raised his paw. Do you hear that? In the distance, a soft, shimmering song rang out, quiet like the morning song of dew, incredibly beautiful, calm and warm. Lum's eyes filled with light. That's my mom! And the animals realized they were close, very close. Yet the path ahead still held mysteries, and their little journey was only beginning to reveal its brightest wonder.
The little ones walked carefully, listening to the soft singing. Every sound was like a tiny bridge across the morning air, gently leading them to their goal. Lum walked beside his friends, keeping his head high and trying not to fall behind, though his little paws were tired after the night's adventure. Ahead was a barely visible meadow, bathed in soft light. Among the tall grass stood a group of animals similar to Lum. They were slightly bigger than him, with fluffy ears and gentle eyes full of care and love. Their fur glimmered in the morning sun, like tiny real lanterns. Whisper, Lum peeked its steps. He ran out of the tree shadows, and suddenly the world seemed to hold its breath. Lum's mother bent down, opening her paws, and the moment became magical. The little one was in the embrace of familiar warmth, soft and tender. She held him close, feeling him tremble with joy and relief. My little one, she said, her voice warm and soothing. I was so afraid I'd lose you. I got a little lost, Lum whispered softly, but there was no fear anymore, only happiness. It's okay, her mother smiled. You're back. We're together. Lum's friends stepped closer, careful not to disturb the reunion. Licia, Barney, Timmy, Phil, and Lou watched the moment with joy. They understood the most important mission was complete. The little one was home again. Thank you for helping him, Lum's mother said, turning to the little animals. You are true friends. That was an adventure, Licia exclaimed, wagging her tail. and we loved helping. And now, added Phil, it's time to show you our new place. It's special, and today we'll invite all our little friends. Lum's mother took his paw, and together with their friends, they walked deeper into the forest. Another meadow lay hidden there, bigger than the previous one. Warm sunlight fell on the grass in soft stripes, and the flowers, bright and colorful, seemed to play with every shade of the rainbow. Lum and his friends had never been on this meadow before. "This," Lum whispered, "is a magical place." "Yes," her mother agreed. "This is our new home. Here we will teach the little ones to find friends, care for forest flowers, and enjoy each day." The little animals sat in a circle, and Lum settled beside his mother. Around them was a wonderful silence, not empty but full of harmony. Rustling leaves, the murmur of the stream, a gentle breeze, and the distant, lilting calls of birds. For the first time, Lum felt that the forest was not just trees and grass. It was a home full of care, warmth, and small wonders, and he was part of it. The day began slowly, gently, yet promised to be full of discoveries. New friends, new games, new stories. Every step on the soft grass, every laugh, every glance made the world of the forest town even kinder and cozier. And as the sun's rays warmed the earth, little Lum hugged his new and old friends, knowing this day would bring much joy, much light, and many warm moments to remember for a lifetime.
Evening, the warm day slowly gave way to soft twilight. The sun's rays grew longer, quieter, and calmer, as if even they had grown tired over the day and now wanted to rest a little. Light mist streaks drifted above the treetops like heavenly blankets, gently covering Forest Town and preparing it for sleep. On the large meadow where the little ones had spent such a full day, the air smelled of honeyed flowers and warm, dry moss. The grass swayed gently, as if softly lulling the earth itself. The forest grew quieter and quieter. The friends sat together, Licia, Barney, Phil, Timmy, Lou, Lena, and little Loom. They watched the sky slowly change colors from golden to pink, from pink to lavender, from lavender to deep blue, where the first stars would soon appear. Loom's mother arranged small fireflies, their families, on soft leaves around them. They lit up and went out like tiny lanterns breathing light. "This is how the forest tells us that night is coming," she whispered. "It becomes soft, bright, and calm." Loom snuggled closer to his mother. His fluffy fur glowed a little too, just enough to make it warm and cozy. "I like the evening," Licia whispered. "It's so peaceful." "Yes," Barney yawned, "as if everything around is becoming soft." The leaves on the trees fluttered quietly, as if agreeing. In the distance came the evening songs of the birds, smooth, drawn out, sleepy. Not a single loud note, only a soft, feathery hum of the air. The forest songbirds were singing a gentle lullaby for the little ones. Lena was the first to lower her head onto her paws. She murmured sleepily. "Do you hear?"
The forest is falling asleep. Indeed, the wind's rustle grew quieter, the sounds of forest animals faded. Even the stream, which had been noisy all day, now just bubbled quietly, not wanting to wake anyone. Loom's mother lifted her head to the sky, where the first stars were already shining. "Evening is a time for gratitude," she said softly, "a time to remember all the good things that happened during the day." The little ones listened to her like tiny flowers opening toward warmth. "Today we made new friends," Licia said. "And helped Loom," added Phil. "And found the magical meadow," Timmy smiled. "And ate lots of berries," Barney mumbled sleepily. The friends laughed quietly, careful not to disturb the evening peace. Tiny sparks fell slowly from the sky, not stars, but the pollen of night-blooming luminescent flowers. They only appeared at twilight, when the world became especially calm. One such spark landed on Loom's tiny nose. The little one sneezed, and everyone quietly laughed again. Loom's mother began to hum a soft, gentle lullaby like a light breeze. "Sleep walks along the paths, over soft moss, over leaves, along the quiet stream. Sleep comes to all little ones, to the yellow, fluffy, tiny, to those who played a lot today, to those who were tired, to those who smiled at the sun. Sleep comes, comes, comes." Even the stars seemed to shine more gently to her voice. Loom closed his eyes. Timmy quietly lay down on his side. Lou and Lena snuggled into each other. Licia wrapped her tail around herself like a warm blanket. Barney was almost asleep, swaying gently. Phil looked at everyone with a warm smile until his eyes closed too. Loom's mother covered the little ones with leaves, just as the forest wrapped them all in its nightly quiet. Each leaf smelled softly like morning dew and warm like sun rays. "Sleep, little ones," she whispered. "Tomorrow will be a new, kind day." And when the last ray of the sun disappeared behind the hill, Forest Town sighed softly, long, gentle, and peaceful. The stars shone fully, like hundreds of tiny eyes watching over the little ones. Fireflies rose into the air, slowly circling over the meadow, creating little spirals of light. And the forest whispered faintly, lulling everyone. "Shh, shh, the forest sleeps. Shh, the town sleeps. Shh, the little ones sleep." And that night, all of Forest Town slept under a soft blanket of stars, to the quiet song of the trees, to the warmth of big hearts and the light of small wonders.